Hey guys, and welcome to this exciting version, I guess, of the End Zone Scoop. I'm joined by the 99Yards Draft Talk guys, Owain and Stuart. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, really, really good. Pleased to be with you. And yeah, we're glad that the draft has finally come about. I think we'll both be relieved when it's finally over and we can finally stop predicting and we actually know. But yeah, really excited for tomorrow night.
Yeah, I think you maybe should have had me and Wine on a little bit earlier because I think we're probably both pretty knackered by now, and looking forward to tomorrow night, just chilling out with some beers and watching as things unfold.
As you can see, I'm here on my own because my two gals have ditched me. Liz is up sunning in Dubai, so and Dana is actually at the draft, so she does have a good excuse. Liz does too, to be fair. I would rather be holidaying in Dubai. So yeah, so obviously we're quite novices when it comes to the draft. Well, maybe Dana's not. She's always the knowledgeable one in this trio. But can you just explain quickly for our viewers what is the format, how it works, and why is tomorrow night the most exciting night? Well, or some people say day 2 is the most exciting night. What do you guys think?
Day one is definitely the most talked about night. So in terms of the draft order, it will go from the statistically the worst NFL team last season, which is the Jacksonville Jaguars, through to 32, which would have been the LA Rams, but they traded their pick to the Detroit Lions. So in terms of draft order, it is all a little bit scattered. It should go on order. It hasn't quite worked out that way this year with so many trades. I think there's 8 different teams who have multiple first-round picks, which is the most that there's ever been in the NFL draft. So we're going to see some movement. We already have seen some movement, so there's going to be a lot to look out for.
Yeah, I think that this year in particular, because the draft is so unpredictable, I think nobody really knows what's going to happen, even at the top of the draft, which you've seen in many years gone by, that people have a rough idea who's going number one. We still don't really know for definite. But we were talking about it the other night that we're really excited for day 2 as well. We thought that might be where some of the really interesting stuff happens this year. But yeah, day 1 has been talked to death, and I think now we're just getting down to it. We just want to know who's getting picked.
Well, I mean, that was going to be my next question. Who do you guys think will go number one? Like, who should we be looking out for on day 1 as well? Because as I was saying just to Owen before, I don't feel like I know a lot of the draft class this year as much as I have in previous years. So who should we look out for? Who's really exciting? And yeah, who do you think will get that lucrative number 1 spot?
Yeah, so me and Owen both put out our mock drafts yesterday, and both hadn't consulted each other in the slightest about it. And we both had the edge defender Trayvon Walker from Georgia as the number 1 pick, which I'm maybe speaking out of turn and speaking on Owen's behalf, but we both don't agree that should be the number 1 pick.
Yep.
Neither of us had him even as a top 3 edge rusher when we came to discuss on about it. But there's so much chatter that it looks like that might be the way that the Jacksonville Jaguars are heading.
Yeah, so the talk is that it will likely be Trayvon Walker. There is a couple of other names in the mix. Aiden Hutchinson is the one that is being spoken about probably the most over the draft cycle, and I would say they're quite similar type of prospects, Trayvon Walker and Aiden Hutchinson, in terms of they are both athletic freaks. What Trayvon Walker has going for him over Aiden Hutchinson is he's got a 7-foot wingspan, which Trent Baalke of the Jacksonville Jaguars absolutely loves, and he also hates Jim Harbaugh, which also means that the betting edges towards Trayvon Walker, but the one over the last sort of 24 hours has been Ikem Ekwonu, the tackle from NC State, has been rumored because Doug Peterson really, really likes him. So it could be a battle for power in Jacksonville, and it'll be interesting to see whose view comes out on top tomorrow.
Yeah, I wonder now, just with been the announcement that Cam Robinson has signed an extension as the left tackle at Jacksonville, whether maybe some of that chatter might quieten down around Ekwonu, and whether it's down to the 2 pass rushers as the number 1 pick now. But I think that's probably the only 3 names I think now that are into it. It started off a bit wider. and it's probably been narrowed down to one of those three. And if I was betting, I'd probably say edge rusher over tackle. But again, it could be a flip of a coin. We really don't 100% know what's going to happen.
Keep your money in your pocket.
I think what's quite interesting about this draft class in particular, we always talk about quarterbacks going in the first round, and normally is a quarterback that is number one. But it's quite quiet this year compared to like last year and the previous years. And even for 2023, there's a lot more prospects coming through who maybe would go as number one. Why do you think that is this year, that we seem to have like a quiet QB class?
I think it's just down to the actual players that are in that class. I don't think that it's a lack of teams wanting or needing a quarterback. I just don't think that there's maybe that top end talent that we saw. I mean, we saw three quarterbacks gone in the first 3 picks last year, and 5 by pick 15. We might see a couple go in the top 10, but I think that they're probably players who are projections, and teams are maybe not desperate, but maybe reaching a little bit because the quarterback is such a valuable position. But I think it is more. It's not that the want isn't there. I think that the talent is maybe just not there for some other teams to be rushing to trade up for.
And I suppose just adding to that, there is talent in this quarterback class. Don't think that there isn't any quarterbacks. There definitely is. The difference is that there's talent and not necessarily production. And where the production has happened in terms of Kenny Pickett of Pittsburgh's had an outstanding year, but he is an older prospect and he doesn't necessarily have the talent that goes with some of these other ones, like you're seeing from Malik Willis from Liberty, who has all the talent, has decent production, but against lesser or FCS opposition. But I'm with you. I do think that we may see a couple go in the top 10 just because owners are in on this conversation as well. And people go to NFL games to watch good quarterbacks and quarterback play. And so quarterbacks drive money. So if you draft a quarterback, you're going to be able to put bums on seats. You're going to be able to sell some jerseys, and that all means money. So I do think that might come into it somewhere. The Panthers are going to be a really interesting one at number 6. They've been linked with Kenny Pickett for so long because Matt Rule recruited him at Temple in college, and he also has a link back to the owner at Pitt, who are both alums. So that's been a really constant correlation in terms of a fit, and you're going to see Malik Willis linked in the top 10 as well. So it will be really interesting to see where these teams fall. And see the Panthers, for instance, don't draft again until outside the top 100. So they're probably a really prime trade back spot, but who knows whether the value will be there, because there's not going to be many teams wanting to move up to draft one of these guys.
And I think as well, the quarterback chatter with the Panthers is that Matt Rule really is on the hot seat. And do you want to go into a year when you're in the hot seat with Shona's favourite player, Sam Darnold, as your only guy under centre? It makes an interesting, if he's going to go down, do you want to go down in a blaze of glory with a quarterback, or do you want to go out with a whimper with Darnold?
I think my Sam Darnold steam train came right off last season. The wheels came off. The driver left the building. All the above. But as you mentioned, like there is teams that are desperately needing quarterbacks. As you mentioned, they're the Panthers. But as people know, all 3 of us are Seahawks fans, and at the moment we've got Drew Lock or Gino. So. But the thing is, do you think like if the team does take Malik or Kenny, do they need to be at a team that has a starter already who can take them up? Because as you said, they're prospects, but they're not the immediate starters that we've seen previously.
I think of the two, if you wanted somebody to start immediately, Kenny Pickett would be the man. I think that he probably, of all the quarterback prospects, he's probably the most ready to go now. But has he got more to go? Is the question I would ask. Is he at his peak, at his kind of ceiling? But if they have someone that they want to groom for a year and they're willing to let Drew Lock play out or somebody, I think Malik Willis would be that guy. He's got all the physical tools that you want, but maybe just needs a bit of seasoning, a bit of time with the pros to work out what he's going to be capable of doing.
Yeah, and I've spoken consistently about both the Falcons and the Seahawks probably being in play for Malik Willis 8 and 9. And as a Falcons fan, I probably hate that as much as you do, Shona, don't worry. But Malik Willis, does have a ridiculously high ceiling, and people worry about his floor. But what I would say to that is that he has played with name another player on Liberty is what I would say, and there isn't anyone, and he has performed without having really any other name on that team. So if he could do that at the NFL level, then why not be able to start him straight away? But it's up to you whether you want to start Drew Lock and have Malik Willis on the bench, or do you want to start Marcus Mariota and have Malik Willis on the bench? But yeah, if you're wanting, we've spoken about it at length. Shu probably agrees with me here, that if you want a quarterback who's going to get you to 8-8, then Kenny Pickett is your guy. If you are reaching for the stars and wanting an elite quarterback, which I think you probably do need a superstar at the position now in the NFL, then Malik Willis is probably the one you want to take.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had that discussion many a time over the last few weeks that Malik Willis is if you're wanting to hang your hat on somebody who potentially could be a superstar, he may absolutely flame out and be nothing. You never know. But he's a guy who has the attributes and the talent that could be that. The other guys, I think, are some works in progress. And Kenny Pickett is for me that kind of guy. Kind of thinking not necessarily the same player, but someone like a Kirk Cousins type of, can win games at the NFL, but isn't going to be that guy that's going to get you over and above and away off into the deep playoff runs.
I guess what would be another interesting fact, do teams draft a guy because they don't believe in their starter at the moment, and then maybe, they still do tank, and then they get a quarterback they want the following season? Could you see some teams doing that this year as well?
Yeah, absolutely, and we've seen it, haven't we? The Arizona Cardinals did it, where they drafted Josh Rosen and then went back for Kyler Murray. That if you do draft a quarterback this year, that absolutely has to be in play. That if it doesn't work, then you have to be able to move on to one of these guys next year. And there is a couple of guys coming up next year, which we won't speak about yet, but should so far be decent. So it will be interesting, and we're already seeing teams trading back and picking up draft capital for next year, already posturing in the 2023 NFL draft before the 2022 one's even begun. So yeah, absolutely, and teams should think that way, where you can't do what the Giants have done with Daniel Jones and just keep pumping it straight forward, thinking it will come. Well, it may never. So if you have an opportunity to improve at any position in the NFL draft, you should do so, whether that's a quarterback or any other position.
Yeah, I mean, certainly having a kind of, I've heard this motto before and I kind of stand by it. Having a good player shouldn't stop you drafting a great player.
Absolutely.
So if you've got a player in a position you think, yeah, he's good, but we could get better, you're always going to take that upgrade.
And cheaper too.
I feel like New York are like, oh, he still looks like Eli. He'll come good like Eli. And I'm like, no, he's rubbish. He's terrible. Like, just move on.
Yeah, they're a team I wonder, you just talking as an aside, they've got picks at 5 and 7. Do they want about pushing some of that capital into next year? They might do. I think if they could do it, I think it would be a wise move if they want to pick up some assets for, they potentially are going to move on from Daniel Jones next year unless he's lights out amazing, which I just can't see it happening. But so the Jets, I wonder if there's a team that might want to move around near the start of that draft.
Yeah, we've spoken about this.
Sorry, the Giants, not the Jets.
Yeah, if you just want to just mention the Giants there, that we've spoken about it there, that we're talking about the Giants possibly pushing draft capital into next year, but all they've done is spoken about how they're going to try and put talent around Daniel Jones. Well, you can't say one thing and do another. Well, that's never happened in the NFL before, has it? So if they do stay put and draft at 5 and 7, then you'd expect it to make it easier for Daniel Jones, whether that's even a piece on defense, which can take the ball away, like a corner or potentially a defensive end. But if they do push draft capital into next year, especially a first rounder, then you have to think that they are not all in with this new coaching staff on Daniel Jones.
I don't know if you guys saw, but there was a wee rumor yesterday that there's a couple of teams planning to draft up, which I thought was quite surprising. Who do you, if they do that, what are they going for? Because people are saying it has to be a quarterback. What else would they be going for? But as we've already said, you've only really got two guys that you'd be aiming to grab. So in the top 10, likely. So would you actually think? Do you see teams moving up essentially tomorrow, or do you see them just sticking put?
I think that more than likely we'll see a majority stick and pick, just because if, as expected, we do see a couple of quarterbacks go in the top 10, which pushes the value into the teens then in terms of who could be drafted in the top 10, then teams are probably going to stick and pick. The only thing where do teams trade up? The Steelers are one that are being consistently linked to Malik Willis, and we'll see if he maybe gets to 7. Do the Giants, as we just spoke about, maybe entertain that? The Saints as well have already made a trade in the first round, trading a first round in next year to get one this year, and pairing what they have at 16 and 18 now, I think, or was it 16 and 19? Sorry, that you could package those together and effectively move up to 4 or 5. So could that be for a quarterback? Yes, they need one, but they also need a tackle, which I think is the more likely scenario, where they are going to be able to jump a couple of tackle needy teams to get one of the big three in Evan Neal, in Ikem Ekwonu, and Charles Cross.
Yeah, there seems to have been a lot of chatter as well about the Eagles making moves to move up, but I'm not sure what to make of that and where they're going with that, because they have the picks again, both in the teens, and the needs that I think that the Eagles might address. They could certainly pick at that spot. So it makes me think, are the offensive line? I'm not sure that's the biggest need in the world that the Eagles have, or is it a pass rusher that they may be looking to get? Because I don't think that they're obviously going for a quarterback, because they still have plenty of draft capital next year. And I mean, with Jalen Hurts, who for all his flaws, they got into the playoffs last year. So I'm not sure what to make of that chatter. Are they just trying to drum up a bit of interest and stuff? Who knows at this stage?
I think you may be seeing a couple of teams just test the water as well, in terms of sussing out what it would take, just so they know when that player is at 10, at 11, they'll know where it costs to go and get them.
So normally in the first round as well, we always get a faller, a guy who is expected to go early on, and they, for some reason or another, they just continue to fall. We've seen that year on year. And it always makes for quite an interesting night, because the commentators always speak about it. They keep going, this guy's still available. Why is he not getting picked? Like, what's going on? And then they start moving him to the back room, as they say. Is there anyone that could potentially be, or is it going to be more of like the status quo and people will generally pick who the mock simulators have gone for?
I suppose the easy answer would be it could be anyone. It could be one of 20 players, because that's how many names are probably linked to go into the top 10. A couple of names: Kyle Hamilton, the safety from Notre Dame, is my number 1 overall prospect in this class. Now is looking unlikely that he goes in the top 10. So he's one, the name you may hear slipping down between 11 and 15, where you're going to hear that he is still available. Another one maybe to watch out for is Kayvon Thibodeau. He's my number 2 player in the overall class. He has been spoken about a lot, that in terms of his attitude isn't conducive with what teams want. I'm not necessarily sure I agree with that. I'm pretty sure there's some teams just putting some stuff out there, hoping that he falls to them. But if he falls outside of the top 5, he's going to be one. Well, Thibodeau's still on the board. Until he comes off. So they're 2 names which you're going to hear a lot about.
Another name that I might throw in there is Charles Cross. And I wonder if there's that run on people picking quarterbacks, up in that top 10. And then you've got the other 2 guys who are probably favoured more to go ahead of him in Evan Neal and Ikem Ekwonu. If they get picked up, and then we have some quarterbacks, and then maybe some teams that aren't so interested in a tackle, he might fall out. But again, as we don't know, he might get picked within that top 6, 7 picks. It's really difficult to say. But it wouldn't surprise me if he tumbled a little bit. I don't think he would get too far, but out with the top 10, certainly. I think that's certainly a possible. And if he does, then I would think that if the Saints are still kept their powder dry, they pull the trigger and think about going up for someone like him, because he would absolutely fit what they've lost in Teron Armstead.
It's really difficult to try and second guess at this point as well, isn't it? Because we're hearing today that there's certain teams pumping out that they've got some medical issues with Evan Neal, which no one has heard of until now, didn't participate in the combine, and that's being kind of linked to it as why did he not do his medicals at the combine if there wasn't an issue. But this could all be made up, or there could be something. It's it's really difficult to kind of decipher what's true and what isn't at this point, because I'm sure a team like the Seahawks might love the fact that Evan Neal would be there at 9, and so would just make something up to hope that he falls there. It would be, and it would work, and it would be good if it did.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how we talk about, okay, yeah, we'll know what happens on draft night. Sometimes the analysis a week, 2 weeks later, when you see all these war room clips and these discussions, it's almost as fascinating as actually what happens at the draft night. See, well, what if they were so close to drafting X player and they went another direction? What could have been? So it'll rumble and linger on for a few weeks later afterwards as well.
So obviously, it starts tomorrow. It's the first round, and teams have multiple picks in the first round, the second round, the early rounds. The better you're likely you're going to build up your team for next season. Hopefully, that's the case. Who's going to have the best draft class this year, do you think?
I can tell you it's not going to be Miami, because we've got no picks. I think it's pick 102 or 104 is the first one. So they did it last year, and I used Owen's ranking board, and we gave points for how much people picked, and they actually got the best value for the draft this year. So I'll maybe do that after this year. But there's teams who have multiple picks, and I think it's how they use them. I think there's like the Chiefs have got something ridiculous like 12 picks.
Yeah,
they don't need 12 players in that draft, and I think how these teams package up to get the talent that they want might be the way of looking at who's had the best draft.
Yeah, and in terms of roster building, you can't draft 12 players. It's in terms of the cost control, it's not doable. So they're going to be moving about again. Could be looking to push some into next year. In terms of a team, I've got a sneaky feeling that the Baltimore Ravens might have a good draft. They have lots of capital between the third and the fourth round. They always draft well, and they always draft well in those third and fourth rounds. So I imagine they'll pick up a ton of good players there. I think, is it 4 or 5 fourth round picks that the Baltimore Ravens have? You just know that whoever falls out of day 2, and they'll just pick them up, and they'll be able to groom them into what they want. So Baltimore Ravens for me.
Another team for me, I think that often uses a draft capital quite well, the Green Bay Packers. I think that they will be a team that they've got 2 first-round picks, and they've got some other capital as well. Yeah, they maybe had the year where they picked Jordan Love in the first round, but by God, did it fire up Aaron Rodgers, so it's maybe a well-spent pick. But they're a team that I trust to draft pretty well with what they have. They usually make quite sensible picks and build a team and know what they're doing. So I think for me, the Packers are a team to maybe watch and see what they do, particularly on day 1 and day 2.
Yeah, they're teams that you don't necessarily have to swing for the fences every time. That you can, you can take those doubles. Just don't have misses. Just draft good players. Don't have misses on one of them. Will get you there. So those are the teams that you want to be looking out for. That take the sensible selections.
It's a bit boring this year. There's no Raiders in the first round. So we always have a bit of a what the heck are the Raiders going to do, particularly when they had multiple picks for a couple of years. And quite sad to see that there's no Mayock Gruden this year.
No, but we don't know what's happening with any of the 32 picks, Stu. So it really doesn't matter, does it?
Yeah, that's true. But it was we had certainly some eye rolling inducement last year when we were watching the draft. So yeah, I'm a bit sad that they're not there, to be honest.
So I guess there might be quite a loaded question, but who do you think is? I know you mentioned it all depends on picks, but who do you think is not going to do so well with the picks they have and the areas they should pick? Will the Seahawks pick somebody we've never heard of again? That's just for my own consensus. Who do you think will not strike when the iron's hot when they should?
I'll go with the Carolina Panthers just because there's so much pressure on them here that if they do stick and pick at 6, that they don't have their next pick is outside of the top 100. So you have to think that they want to move back with that selection. Now, is there a market? I don't know. And then, if they do stick and pick, whether it's a quarterback, whether it's a tackle, that isn't going to do that for us. So they're under so much pressure to get this right, especially being on the hot seat, that I could see the pressure getting to them and them making a mistake. So I would say that the Panthers, they really, really have to nail this, and they're in such a difficult position. And to be fair, they've put themselves in that position by messing around at quarterback for so long. But they have to get it right, and there's so much pressure on it too.
I'm going to say Jacksonville. And for me, if they do pick Trayvon Walker at number 1, they put themselves under a hell of a lot of pressure. We've never seen a player like Trayvon Walker who has so much upside, but so much question marks about him and his production go at number 1 before. I think that, we've maybe seen reaches for quarterbacks at number 1, but that's understandable. And then they pick again at the top of the second round. Where do they go? If from there, it's a really difficult one. If Trayvon Walker comes off and he's the best defensive end we've ever seen for 20 years, then fair play to them. They've spotted it when maybe some others haven't. But they're banking an awful lot on upside if they do pick him.
When you've got fans turning up in the stadium in clown masks, you have to get this right. And it's the Jaguars, man. Who knows?
Yeah. I won't be surprised if they're picking in the top 5 again next year, and the year after, and the year after, and the year after again.
I mean, this could be a whole podcast in itself, but I'll just fire out a wee quick question. If the teams do draft badly, does that mean that the coaches are basically in the hot seat before the season's even begun?
It depends on who it is, I guess. So a team like the Panthers, which have struggled and made bad decisions, if they're going to continue making bad decisions, then absolutely they're going to look to make a change. The Eagles, I think, are one where they're relatively safe. I think they'll be okay. Teams where the general manager's been in place for years. Steelers, for instance, notoriously draft well. If they had one bad draft, I think they could be excused for it. So it just depends on the situation of that team's in. But going back to what I said about the Panthers, that if you need wins now, then you have to make sure you get it right. Otherwise, you're out the building, and it's up to you whether you want to take Kenny Pickett to get you some wins now, just to tie you over. It'll buy you an extra year in the job, or whether you want to swing for the fences, go for a player like Malik Willis, who in the future could win you a Super Bowl. But it depends how much conviction you have in what you do. And for some teams, like the Jags, like the Panthers, it hasn't always worked for them.
Another team that's maybe the coach is on a sneaky hot seat is Cardinals. And the reason I think that is that we've seen the Cardinals over a couple of years now with Cliff Kingsbury. They've kind of exploded in the early season and just faltered and sputtered over the line. Yes, they've made the playoffs, but have they really made much of an impact there? They've got a quarterback who's reportedly unsettled. They have to, I think, get things right around Kyler Murray and show that there's been a clear progression from year on year, that they're going to be a winning, challenging franchise, or there might be just a changing of the guard there. I don't know. It's just a feeling I have that Kingsbury's maybe under a bit more pressure than has maybe been made out.
Yeah, and a team like the Washington Commanders as well, right? They don't need an excuse right now to get people out of the building, but why not throw another one in there if you draft badly? I mean, they haven't made changes on other things, but if that happens, then yeah, they're a team that could as well. Teams like the Vikings have already made their change. They made the change just gone. So it'll be interesting to see a team like that, what they go for. There's been such turnover as well in terms of general managers this year. It'll be really interesting that no one really knows what their draft philosophy is. So it'll be interesting to see how they go about it.
All right, well, just the last question, which is really simple. So what time does it all kick off tomorrow, and where can we all watch it?
So you can watch it. NFL Network, I think, is probably the best place to watch it, and it will be 1 a.m. UK time, I believe, which is 8 p.m. Eastern is when it will all kick off. But I'm sure if you put NFL Network on right now, there'll be wall-to-wall coverage of it.
Yeah, and I think Sky Sports are showing it as well. So if that is an option for you, certainly, they will have the draft coverage firing on all cylinders around that time as well.
Right. Well, thank you so much, guys, for joining us. That was really good and really informative to let people know, because I had no clue. Well, I kind of knew bits, but not a lot. But thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it, and we'll hopefully catch up again maybe after the draft and maybe chat about who has drafted well. Probably not Seattle. So it's okay. I'm not bitter or anything. It's fine.
We can all be sad together. Don't worry. We'll come and join you after the draft.
Together. I like that. Let's all have a rubbish 2022 season together.
Yeah, I don't have to worry about it till I think day 3. So, end of day 2. So I'll just be enjoying watching everyone else make the mistakes for a change.
I'm probably gonna wake up tomorrow morning and see a gif from Pete Carroll doing the cap, bouncing back, and I'll be like, "You don't you dare! Like, you need to pick at 9."
Yeah, it must be a while since Seahawks have picked that high.
It has actually been a while. Yeah.
Lucky we've not got Dana on. She might be upset if they pick something. Well, maybe have to wait and see how they pick before we come back on.
Yeah, I think we should definitely get back together and do like a review of the draft and see if Matt Rule is going to be on that hot seat or Cliff Kingsbury is going to be there. We'll have to have a chat about that next time.
Definitely.
Yeah, we'll be more than glad to come back on.
All right, well, thanks very much, and hope you have a very good draft, guys. Enjoy the coverage, and see you next time.
Thank you.